Welcome to a new podcast. We are starting today in a new setup here in the studio. We are starting a series called The War on Children. We are here in the studio with Georgiana, my wife, and with Marjorie Cole. I'll let Georgiana introduce her.
Thank you. So, for us is an honor, big honor to have Magical with us today. So, few words about her. She's a mother of 4 kids, a grandmother. She's been in ministry for many years together with her husband. From what I understand, 45 years. Her husband was a pastor and she was there all along with him. She's an author of many books. We have also in Romanian the books on Alpha Omega. You can find her books in our language and you can order them there. She's been 25 years in Christian counseling, but she started with psychology and she ended up serving the Lord with this profession. So welcome. We have
Thank you.
great topic.
I'm excited about the topic. Yes, it's the war on children is something that almost people miss or overlook in their attempt to keep up with their lives. And children are kind of sometimes pushed to the side and ignored. So I think this is an awesome topic. And just a little bit more about myself. You really did a good job. I've been in this field of counseling for 25, 30 years, written several books, and visited your beautiful country several times. And so I'm looking forward to our topic, our conversation today. It's kind of you're going to ask questions and we're going to discuss things. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for your time, and we really appreciate that. And I'm sure also the people who will watch this later will be blessed by it. And this is the main reason we do that, to bless people and to help them with their questions and the problem they face, because we understand it's not easy to raise children and to do this well and in the healthy way.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely.
Well, maybe you want to say some more about who you are, like as a mother, maybe, or where you should
mother first,
start to talk about this.
I have 4 daughters, and they're grown. And if you combine their ages, I have over probably 175 years of parenting experiences with them, and now with their children, our grandchildren, and husbands and things like that. So, my husband and I were Christians when our children were born. But as with most people in your early years when you're starting to parent, you get maybe the first couple of years, you're really paying attention to the children and making sure everything's good and reading all the books and whatnot. But then after that, it gets to be hard. They get noisy, they get needy. Sometimes there is illnesses or issues. And so it gets to be a difficult, almost burden for a lot of parents to take care of their children in a godly way. And because they don't really know how to take care of the children or how to address needs, and they really haven't been taught how to pull in the spiritual aspects of the demonic or spiritual aspects that are trying to destroy the children, deceive the children, snatch the children away. They are kind of like at their wits' end. They don't really know what to do or how to respond. As a matter of fact, I have some clients, a lot of clients who they bring their children in. We talk about, their struggles. A lot of them are crisis cases, where the child is acting out in ways that are dangerous or almost deadly, threatening their families. And some of them actually are manifesting, but that's not maybe your typical child. So we don't want to go to the extremes right away, but just to know that there are tormenting spirits that go after children. And some children are actually born with a spirit of fear. And that's when you see things like the colic and the crying and they can't be comforted and they're difficult and they resist even being breastfed. There's all kinds of things that happen with children because the parents don't know how to comfort them. And that's probably the worst and the most serious of all the problems. The parents just don't know how to help or comfort their child.
Well, but I also noticed, saw that this problem around me, with the families around me, with family and friends and all that, and pop up this question in my head: why the families start to see the child as a problem sometimes, or why the also the church starts to see the kids as, not as blessings, but at some point they start to see it as somebody who's just noisy and not behaving and all that. What we miss there?
Well, I believe that children are a challenge. I mean, every good and perfect thing, whatever it is you're trying to do or accomplish, whether it's a career or build a house or raise a child, there's always problems and there's always challenges. And I think we don't like problems, so we don't want to address things. And if you address them early on in the child's life, you will have a lot easier time than if you wait until things grow up and get worse, because it's like a little weed. If you pluck out that weed when it's just tiny, it's going to be easy to take out. But if you wait till it grows up, some weeds grow taller than we are, and you can't pull them out quickly, and you can't, attend to. So what the problem is we don't realize what a precious treasure these children are. They're the legacy. Everything else you have will be left behind. The only thing we can take with us when we go to heaven is our children. And so bringing them up in the fear and the admonition of the Lord is so important. And, people look to books and psychology. As a matter of fact, I was a psychologist for 10 years, licensed in the United States, in the state of Minnesota. But I let go of that because they weren't allowing us the freedom to actually incorporate the Word of God and the principles of that Word into the counseling. And, just to call a quick note to the book of Proverbs, people are reading every book in the world on how to raise children or, potty train them or personality types or whatever they got going on. But if they would look in the book of Proverbs, the chapters 2 through 7, all of the verses, the very first verse of every chapter says, "My son, receive my words. My son, do not forget my law. Hear, my children, the instructions of a father." Chapter 5, "My son, pay attention to my wisdom." 6, "My son, if you become a surety for a friend." He's going on and on with all of these, addressing his children and saying, "Keep my words, my son, keep my words," in chapter 7. And then he goes on to talk about wisdom. So, a lot of these little sayings from the Proverbs are very important pieces of information that help us go forward with wisdom in raising our children. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." So training, raising your children with purpose and with intention and with a focus, not just scattering it all around and, oh, well, let them choose, and, we'll let them decide what church they want to go to or what sex they want to be. This is absolutely random, and it's abusive, actually, because the whole burden, the point, responsibility of being a parent is to raise the child.
Do parents realize that it's an actual war, a real war against them, or they don't realize that?
No, for the most part, they don't realize, because really, I do a lot of work with spiritual counseling and spiritual warfare and deliverance, and people are casual and passive in their lives. They just want to avoid things, escape things, stay out of trouble, stay safe, have a good life, have a mediocre, everybody's happy life. But this is a war. And if you don't put that in your mind and understand that we are at war, and Satan is after our children, because the children are the legacy. Again, the children are the future. If he can control the children, he's got the next several generations. He's got the direction of everything if he can get the children. So I would say that no, they don't understand it's a war for their souls and for the souls of their children. And they don't understand that this is a conspiracy. I mean, people are shamed into shutting up about this idea of there being a war, because they
Yes.
say, well, are you a conspiracy theorist? Well, no, it's not a theory. It is a fact. And it began in the Garden of Eden with the conversations between Eve and the serpent. And that conspiracy, that war has gone on between God and the devil for our souls ever since.
Yes, and something I see a lot is like people are thinking the children are too small, too young to start to have some discussions with them. For example, my neighbor got a dog, and also with dog training, the dog said the doctor said the dog should have 6 months old to start the training. So also we see that like all kind of numbers and opinions from specialists. So how young should be the children to start biblical education or simply education at home?
That's a pretty easy answer. In the womb. I have seen people pray over their children, sing to their children, read Bible stories to their children, even when the child is still in the womb. So the moment you know that you are a parent and that child is growing in your womb, and then as the child comes to birth, and it's just a matter of observing, being attentive to what God is saying to you in the spirit, and training the child, and understanding. I think one of the real issues is, yes, we love our children. Of course we do. Most people would love their children, but they don't know how to show it. A lot of people raise up their children in a spirit of love mixed with fear. And so instead of loving them and listening to them, and looking them in the eye and hearing what their heart is saying, and a lot of times children act out because they don't know what to say. Their words aren't there yet for them to use, like, I'm afraid, I'm being controlled. They just act out. They misbehave. And so then we label that as attention deficit, and we give them a pill or a medication rather than just sitting down with them saying, okay, honey, what's the problem? What's making you afraid? What are you worried about? And, and so parents just don't take that time. I think if they take the time, sit down and be small, get down on the child's level and look in their eye and say, what's going on, honey? Or if they're older and they're teenagers, let's sit down, let's talk. Let's spend some time just with them, hearing what they have to say. Take them out for a hamburger or something. Just minister to them by listening. I really believe we'd avoid a lot of problems, because children do not want to be bad. They are not born and created by God to be bad. They're not here to be a pain, a burden, a mischief. But many of them begin to believe that they're a burden, that they're not wanted, that they're an accident, they're troublesome, because of the way they picked up the information that's coming into their world. And so when you're sending information to your child, whether it's through verbal communication or through body language or through neglect or through your own being distracted with your own issues, the child is also interpreting that to mean certain things, like, I am not worth their time, they're not interested in me, children are to be seen and not heard, I don't count, I don't matter. Or on the other hand, the parent is over-parenting, and the child can't do anything without being controlled and lectured, and then you have parents who do everything for their child, which again is very harmful, because then you're training the child to believe, I don't know how to do anything, I can't. Helplessness. I need everybody to help me. And so that child is never going to grow up to be able to make decisions, be confident, and do what they're called to do. So there's a lot of different issues that can come up. But the main thing is to look them in the eye, listen to them with your heart, stop what you're doing, and pay attention to them. Make them the most important thing at that moment, more important than paying the house payment, more important than figuring out what you're gonna make for supper, more important than what the neighbors are going to say. Because a lot of us too raise our children to be trophies. We take them out, we show them off, we dress them up cute, they go to church, they got to sit perfect, and everybody thinks, oh, it's a perfect family. But then you go home and there's fighting and chaos and anger and bitterness and slamming and all kinds of things that we're being a hypocrite. So it's not to make the child look perfect and pretty. It's to give that child that inner character and confidence in knowing who they are in God.
Where is the danger in trying so hard to look perfect for others, like a family, with Facebook and Instagram and all that?
Right.
such a wave of mentality and striving towards that. Where's the danger in that?
Well, the danger in that is it's not true. It's a lie. It's a contrived. You're making something look like something it's not, and that's deceptive. Of course, people have fun on their vacations and they can show fun things, and that's fine. But let that be the true nature of every day, not just this picture I'm going to show you, because I think a lot of people are themselves very controlled by what other people think, including what they think of their children. So your children are kind of a reflection of you. And so I know I have clients who they raised their children. They didn't care what their children did as far as, misbehave, break the law, drink, carry on, just as long as they looked good when they went to church. And of course you have the church too, who doesn't pay much attention. I know we have a lot of children's ministries and fun things for kids, but they're not being fed. They're being entertained. They're not being raised. It's like you're giving them everything they want to eat, which is basically junk food and sugar, rather than giving them the basic nourishment they need through the vegetables, the meat and the potatoes and the milk and this sort of thing. And so churches fall into that same plot because they want lots of kids because it looks good for the church to have a big Sunday school class or a big youth group. And so they feed them pizza and pop and they carry on and they be goofy and they play games, but they don't really. And some of them do that plus teach, and there's nothing wrong with having fun in a youth group, or because you don't want children to be bored, and they need to be busy doing things too. But at the same time, don't neglect the meat of the word, the milk of the word, just to give them what they like to eat, or what, because they're going to get bored if you just give them things that are not substantial. They'll get sick of it after a while, because children actually want real. They want genuine. They want truth, because they're built by God to love the truth.
So, from your experience, at what age children can receive the Lord? Is there an age, or they are too little to do that?
That's a good question. I think there's no age limit or number or year that we should look to, because children all develop at different speeds. I think if they're brought up in the fear and admonition of the Lord from day one, and they see their parents reading the Bible, they see their parents loving one another. That's the best thing that you can do for your children, by the way, is to love their parent, their other parent. That these children are going to be accepting the Lord probably at 2 or 3 years old, maybe, just as, by the time they can actually comprehend these things, or maybe younger. And sometimes children are absolutely neglected and don't know anything about church. Parents don't go to church, and the child ends up wanting to go to church, and ends up, even I've got stories where the kids actually go to church without their parents, and because they're hungry for the truth, they're hungry for the things that are genuine, because children they're straight from heaven, and they came from a place of goodness and truth, and they don't like this snake pit. So neither do we, but they're looking for that return of stability, that love, that trust, that genuine. And of course, that's why they're going to gravitate towards truth and towards God. Children are much easier to lead to the Lord, because they don't have all the skepticism. They're not jaded. They have not been programmed by 25, 30, 40 years of indoctrination and political propaganda. And so they have just these little pure, clear minds, and they can easily understand. They don't know all the technical, spiritual backdrop of Jesus dying on the cross, and why he had to die, and why he had to shed his blood. That can come later. But when you tell them the stories of, Daniel in the lion's den, and David and Goliath, and Moses and the Red Sea opening up, when you begin to speak to them these stories, that becomes to them the basis of their faith and expectation. And so these are the foundational things. So the Bible, children's Bible stories are basic foundations to give them another worldview, a God worldview, as opposed to the world who is giving them mythology and New Age and Harry Potter and all that stuff, which is basically a bunch of smoke and mirrors and lies, as opposed to the solid, substantial truth about God, his character, his actions, what he's done through through the books in the Bible. So any age where they're ready, and I think that might be a parent's thing to be sensitive. Well, honey, there are teachable moments. So, honey, are you ready? Do you know? Do you want to accept Jesus? Here's what that means. Have him come into your heart. And, that means that you're agreeing basically with he died on the cross for you. He shed his blood so that you can get to heaven. He rose from the dead. He's coming again. And he is if you say he's kind of like our way or our ticket kind of to get to heaven. I mean, you have to have a ticket to get in, and Jesus is the ticket. And so accepting him gives you that ticket. That's just one way. You could explain it a million different ways, but being sensitive to that teachable moment of when the child is ready is the time that they should be brought to the Lord.
Well, but how a parent can understand when the child is ready,
Well, I think the children are curious. Some of them are really fun. They ask a lot of deep questions, actually, about the world and about various things. They make funny observations. This comes to my mind. One of our daughters, when she was young, very young, probably 3 or 4. I got 2 stories, actually. Maybe she was younger, maybe 3. She said, we were eating a bowl of cherries, and she said, Mom, why are there bones in these cherries? She doesn't know cherries a seed from a bone. Now, that's not necessarily a teachable moment, but that was a funny thing. And then a funny thing is when we, at the birth of our 4th daughter, the 3 older ones were all praying for her to have all of her fingers and all of her toes and make sure she was okay in every way. And then we brought her home, and the 3-year-old said, "Oh, Mom, we forgot to pray for her teeth." She has no teeth. And so that was, obviously a funny story. The kids are full of curious things like that. And, you have to just be sensitive. That's a teachable moment. Okay, this is why she doesn't have any teeth. God didn't forget about your prayer. This is okay. And just teachable moments where you're aware of what they are thinking, because their little mouth will tell you what they're thinking. However, if you have trained them to shut up, be seen and not heard, stay out of the way, they will, after a while, they will not ask questions anymore. They will not develop their abilities to converse with people. One of our grandchildren was in a difficult situation. There was a divorce in the family, and there was a fear, and they were taught to have no needs, ask no questions, don't, so you can't have any, so you're not going to communicate any problems. You're just going to stay in the background, stay, in the shadows so you don't get in trouble. And even now, years later, that child has a little bit more difficult time putting words together or conversing because he was trained to not do that. And so, of course, that's unfortunate, but that can be fixed with conversation, with prayer. Those things don't have to stay that way. But that's just something to realize, that children are, I always say it this way, we always say they're acting naughty, but they're not really actors. They're reactors. They are reacting to the chaos around them, the frustration, the anxiety of the parent. And so they're actually, if your child is acting up and not being peaceful, either they have a critical need at that point and you need to pay attention, or you have to see they're responding to how I'm behaving. And so we always try to fix the child without going to the point of fixing our own behavior and going to the Lord and saying, God, show me, give me wisdom for my own self, that I won't be creating this anxiety or this neurosis or whatever you want to call it in my child.
Yeah. In the other hand, I've seen like this idea with parents, like the child needs to be all the time happy, and kind of
making the child happy all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes I feel like the child is leading how the schedule goes, how the priorities are going, how the day goes, and is that right?
Yeah, we call that spoiled in a way, because you're right. The child is controlling the parent because the parent is afraid to be the parent. He's afraid to get the child upset, or maybe that child has taught the parent, if you don't give me what I want, I'll throw a trauma, I mean, a tantrum. And so, or something like that. And so you're actually training them to be bullies and controllers. You're not training them to learn to live together in peace and harmony and to submit to what needs to be done. And parents are sometimes afraid to be firm because, and or if there's more than one child and one takes up all the energy or attention and the other two or three or whatever are being neglected, that also becomes a stress. But these children, you're afraid to say no, give them everything they want. This is parenting as a coward. You're not really standing up for truth. You're not teaching them how to. They think they get everything, and that's called entitlement. And I think a lot of this generation, not making a stereotype that it's not their fault, but they have been grown up. We've given them everything, just the video games, the computers, the electronics, the devices, the phones, just to keep them shut up, keep them entertained, keep them away from us so we can have our adult life, whatever that is. And so now they become entitled. We just give them stuff to keep them quiet, and we pay for all of this and pay for all of that. And they don't have to earn anything. They don't have to, contribute into the family. And on the other side, you have parents who have very little, and their children have to learn how to work. They have to learn how to, get a job. They have to learn how to be good at their job so that they don't get fired. We've got, all kinds of examples out there of how children, are raised, and how that raising then becomes demonstrated in how they do jobs, how they get, a lot of kids nowadays, if they don't like the job and it's hard, they quit in 4 days or 2 days. It's too hard to work in fast food, or it's too hard to, pull weeds in the beans or whatever it is. It's too hard. So they don't need the money because they can go back to mom and dad and get a $20 bill every time they need something, or the parent puts the gas in the tank or whatever. And so they don't have any responsibilities that force them to have to grow up.
Also, I'm having this question: how we can help the kids to understand the real life, like the real life. In the real life, you will not be happy all the time. You will not get everything when you want, and you will not get what you want, and you will not get it easy sometimes.
Let them see real life as you live it, as you respond to the problems in your own life, the disappointments, the deaths, the sicknesses, the put downs, the attacks, the gossip. However you respond is what you're teaching them, and that is, a lot of things are more caught than taught. You don't sit down and lecture them; they just pick it up through example.
That makes sense. Yeah. I was having also this question about the difference between education and indoctrination. I think it's important to see the difference between those, because I think sometimes parents just stop the Christian education because they are afraid of being accused of indoctrinating the kids.
Interesting. Well, education is indoctrination. We can educate them in the worldviews, the world goals, the world's appetites, the things of the world that we can train them to seek after those things, money, careers, prestige, power, whatever. Or we can train them and teach them the things of God, which are lasting and eternal and much more valuable. So in the church, they have to make a conscious decision to, first of all, value the children, see them as a precious treasure and a sacred stewardship of the children, and begin to not indoctrinate them in the ways of the world, but deliberately, specifically teach them. I don't even know if the word is educate, because education is used by the enemy a lot to educate us in the wrong ways. But I think to train them up in the way that they should go, as the Bible says, and be deliberate about it, and be specific about it, and have people in that department, the children's ministry, that actually love children, that actually would put the child before themselves, and have and get the instruction from God on how to bring that lesson to the child, and that during that service, that Sunday school service or whatever it is, and for the parents to be consistent also at home, so that the same message is being taught at the church is at home, and so there's not hypocrisy, because the children, when they see hypocrisy and they see double standards, they lose all respect for whoever it is that's teaching them that. And the children are really looking for persons who are genuine, people who genuinely love them. I remember not very long ago, I had a conversation with a young man who I'd never talked to before. He came to church, and I just spent about a half an hour just visiting with him, and I learned so much about him. And he was, you just brush him off. Oh, he's just a kid. He's just a teenager. He's not going to be wanting to talk to an old woman like me. But he sat there and we talked and talked, and I found out all kinds of things about his life. Like he'd had this. We had an awesome conversation, and he was very deep in what he was thinking, and I would just ask him questions and probe a little bit. And I don't think he'd ever had a chance to talk about his life to anyone before. Maybe he had. Maybe when he got in trouble, they'd sit him down and lecture him. I don't know. But he came out into, and this is what children need. They need someone to let them talk about, learn about who they are too. And I think the church can be a big part of that, in giving them opportunity to just listen to them and to lead them and to love them. Listen, lead, and love. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you guys. This has been a very deep pleasure and privilege for me to assist you, because there is a war on children, and we need to recognize that so we can be equipped with what we're going to be facing and have been and are facing. As a matter of fact, one more comment. The way we are in the world right now is because for 2 or 3 generations, we have not raised the children according to the way the Lord has taught us and commanded us to raise them. And that's why we have all of this jealousy and warmongering and powermongering and abuse and gossip and bullying and witchcraft and treachery and suicide and drug addictions. All of these things are the evidence of the very poor ways that we have raised our children. So I pray a blessing upon you, and maybe we can explore this more thoroughly in the future.
Yes. Thank you, Marjorie, for giving us precious advice. Thank you for being with us. Until next time, God bless you.